Hello everyone. So continuing the series of two at a time, today I'm going to discuss two essay topics from the paper of 2024. That means two essay topics, topic number 3 and 7 from the essay paper of Civil Services Examination. But before I start the discussion, I want to talk about or I want to emphasize on something, which is that sometimes, and actually most of the times, the essay topic doesn't get repeated, right? UPSC doesn't repeat its essay topic, but you must have observed that the themes are same, or sometimes the meaning conveyed or the meaning hidden beneath those essay topics are actually same. So this particular topic that I'll be discussing today, topic 3, and this is part 3, right? So, topic 3 of section A, the topic is there is no path to happiness, happiness is the path, right? There is no path to happiness, happiness is the path. I hope you're able to see it clearly. Let me just readjust. Okay. Yes. So, right. Now, this is way different from the 2025 essay topic. It's best to see life as a journey, not as a destination. Both of them, on the first glance, are separate topics, two completely different topics. But when you start brainstorming, when you start understanding, you would understand that the theme, the underlying essence is actually overlapping. It's not exactly same, but yes, they are overlapping. So, having discussed that particular topic from 2025, it's best to see life as a journey, not as a destination. When I was doing the brainstorming for this particular topic, I felt my ideas are overlapping. I was writing the same topic but in a different way. Yes, the key word here is happiness. Here you would be talking mostly about happiness, but then when you actually think about brainstorming the arguments, you would realize that the topic, it's best to see life as a journey, not as a destination, talks about seeing life as a continuous process. And similarly, in this topic, you would notice the same thing, that it's talking about being happy in every moment and not seeing happiness as some objective, as some destination, as some goal or far, goal to achieve. Right. But yes, there will be different examples, there will be different concepts. But I wanted to clarify that this is why practicing previous year questions becomes important. We might feel that, of course, the essay topic is not going to be repeated by UPSC, but the theme does. Or I would say sometimes the underlying ideas, the way you are brainstorming one particular previous year question, you might use the same process to brainstorm another year's particular essay topic. So maybe the brainstorming, the ideas might overlap, okay? And that is why it is, it is sort of, I would say, compulsion to always practice the previous year essay topics, okay? Brainstorm it, write it, and get it evaluated, get it assessed by your peer group, do the self-assessment, watch YouTube videos on solving about those topics. But yes, you have to, you can't skip them, okay? So now let's just focus on this particular topic. So it says there is no path to happiness, happiness is the path, right? Sense क्या बनता है, क्या मतलब निकल रहा है? That means, and please also be very careful, it says there is no path to happiness. Happiness is the path. That means it is trying to say very firmly that there is no single path to happiness. You can't say that I'm walking on this path that I'll achieve happiness. The path which has emotions of happiness inherent in its daily basis, on its daily basis, that is what is happiness is all about, right? So happiness cannot be seen as a destination, it has to be seen as a journey. Okay, now what are the keywords and key phrases? We always start the discussion with this. We need to identify that, okay, what are the important phrases? So here it's, of course, it's easy to understand path to happiness, happiness is the path. Also, I would like to take the opportunity to, make aware the students that the people who had written this topic in the actual mains exam, the actual students and even toppers and rank holders for that matter. So what had happened that one of the previous year toppers from a coaching institute had written the same essay topic as part of that particular coaching institute's test series, okay, essay test series. So he has written it, and of course that copy was, widely circulated. Even I had posted, and I unknowingly posted, my comments on that particular copy of that particular topper. The topper was Gautam Vivekanandan, okay. I'm not shying away from taking his name. So that topper was Gautam Vivekanandan. He's a rank holder from the year of 22, and he was, I think, part of the the vision test series, essay test series, and there he had written the same topic before the actual topic was asked in the UPSC. Okay, so then many people were already like discussing this copy because he was a topper and he was one of the high scorers. So his essay was widely circulated, and even a day before the actual essay paper last year, I had posted it on my channel with my additional comments to help the students understand that how an essay needs to be written. But the problem is that people read it, like students, aspirants read that particular copy. They, saw how the topper had written, and they chose to write the same topic. Now, the problem is, of course, that they wouldn't have, copied as it is. But then I think many students faltered, did not score well when they chose this particular topic, because in their mind, they already had some pre-framed ideas, preconceived notions, because the topper has written like this, so even I need to write. And I think most of the people have done this mistake, and that is why last year, I mean last to last year, this year is 26, so that means in 24, when the people had attempted the paper and when the essay scores were out actually, so it was commonly seen that they were not able to score high, not because it was topic's fault, but because they actually couldn't bring in some fresh or new perspective to the topic, right? So what am I trying to convey? My idea is, or my advice is, that whenever you read toppers copies, it's good to understand from what perspective they are writing the essay. It's good to understand how they are framing the arguments, how they are placing the examples. But it is also equally important to frame your own ideas, to brainstorm that, okay, apart from this, what more can I write? Can I use some different examples? Can I bring in some different perspective? We don't have to blatantly, blindly copy the topper, because the topper's copies is also not perfect. Trust me on this. I have many times told these students that toppers, if you see their copy very diligently, minutely, you would actually come across a lot of mistakes. And that usually happens even in the essay copy, because, sometimes there's lack of balance, the conclusion is compromised, some example was written which was not suitable and relevant to the topic. So all that, you can commonly found as mistakes, as shortcomings, even in the toppers copies, okay? But yes, it is good to have a look at it. It's good to understand, because that's the only thing which is available to us to understand that what is UPSC appreciating in the civil services mains paper of essay, okay? Yes, but do not blindly copy the ideas of topper. Brainstorm your ideas. Think, okay, what more could I write? Do I have some better examples? Do I have something else that I could, that would make my essay stand out? That's the perspective you should be bringing in when you're brainstorming the essay. Okay, so the keywords and the phrases are path to happiness, happiness, happiness is the path. Now, you always want to sort of, after reading the topic, always brainstorm that what all ideas are coming into my mind, because yes, when you're breaking down each and every word of the topic, there will be certain ideas, just like after reading the topic, you do know that, okay, you have to devote some time, some paragraphs to explain what is happiness as a concept, right? That is something which is basic to everybody would be doing it. But then when you read the topic as an entire, in its wholesome nature, then what ideas are coming into your mind, that you should be noting it down. Because in a way, if you place it in the essay, it's really going to bring an extra flavor, a nice touch to your essay. So when I read the topic, okay, I felt again that journey is greater than the destination, because for me, happiness is not a goal. Happiness is the path. It's part of the journey. So journey is greater than destination. Happiness plus peace is not a destination. In the sense, happiness or the feeling of peace cannot be termed as a destination in life, because it's human nature. That's what all of us, we tend to do this, that, okay, if I do this, if I become this, if I achieve this, of course, I'll be happy. But actually, every great person, every philosopher and thinker has talked about the same thing, that actually you should not treat happiness as some end goal. You should use it as a means. You should include it in your daily life. So happiness plus peace is not a destination. Then it also talks about that you need to be mindfulness. Why? Because for me, when I read the topic, when it says happiness is the path, that means I need to be mindful to include happiness in whatever things I'm doing on daily basis. That means bring happiness in the process itself rather than thinking that I'll be happy when I achieve the outcome. Okay, so that is something that you need to understand. Okay, then moving on, focusing on process. I was just jotting down because that's what I do, that I keep on thinking of ideas. Maybe some ideas are overlapping. That's okay, because that's how you force your mind to think. So yes, I jotted down focus on process. Okay, and the same thing, it's the beauty of process. That means yes, it's good to have some objective goals. It's good to have some fixed like you're fixing some results and outcomes in your life. But actually the beauty lies in the process. The beauty lies in enjoying the process towards achieving of that goal, right? Because that goal, achievement of that goal, will bring momentary pleasure. Okay, so let's not make this a philosophical discussion. Let's just focus on this. Okay, so joy, peace, happiness is not an end goal. These many ideas came into my mind. Now, of course, we also try to put in the theme and the category, because this is very important. Like I told you, that some topics will not feel similar to each other in the first glance, but if you actually start brainstorming, you will find similarity in the themes, in the category, in the essence, in the ideas, right? So hashtag happiness, hashtag journey is greater than destination, hashtag means or ends. So should you focus on the means? Should you focus on the process, or should you focus on the outcome, the result, right? Then hashtag process is the same. Journey is greater than destination, process is greater than outcome, okay? And then hashtag enjoy the process, okay? So these are just hashtags because, it will sort of develop ideas around these, particular keywords. So whenever you're decoding any topic in future also from UPSC perspective, like previous year question perspective, or even, if you're part of any test series, there you're thinking, you will be able to relate the ideas. You'll be able to relate examples that, okay, yes, this journey is greater than destination. I had written a similar essay, maybe, as part of any test series. So I can bring those ideas. That's how you brainstorm the ideas. You can't brainstorm every time you pick up a fresh topic, every new idea. That's not possible. That, whenever you are writing something, writing a new, fresh essay topic, you will always think of the freshest and the newest of ideas. No, you have to extract something which you have already done, which you have already learned, which you have already applied in the previously written essays. Okay, so that's why this is so important. Now let's actually move on to the arguments. So you do all know, if you have been following this series, you know that I have a habit of framing the arguments, like decoding the essay topic with the help of arguments, and of course I give you certain hints towards examples too. This particular topic, or any topic for that matter, even the next topic in this particular section, the today's session, I'll be discussing another topic also. That topic also, you're not supposed to keep on justifying by using pestle approach. Okay, politically, happiness is the path and there's no path to happiness, or socially, like, you don't have to use those pestle or those kind of approaches. That's not going to work. You have to decode the topic, philosophically decode, dissect the topic. Okay, so for that, of course, arguments needs to be framed. Usually my first argument is always, I use it to set the context, to proceed gradually into the core arguments. So my first argument is never the core argument. It's always that argument which is being used to set the context for the upcoming core arguments, because I don't want to jump directly that, okay, what is the happiness, what is the path to happiness, happiness is the path. No, I want to first talk about that, what do we actually understand by the concept of happiness, or the emotion of happiness for that matter. So my first question will always be that okay, just a moment. Yes, so it's always about what is happiness, right? Setting the context and giving the theoretical base. Now, within this particular argument, I will be, of course, giving you a lot of ideas, because my also, my one of the endeavor along, like with this series, is also to give you theoretical base, to give you certain, additional ideas which conventionally we do not prepare as part of our GS or UPSC preparation. So that is why my endeavor is to give you certain concepts, certain ideas, so that you can use it over essay and even ethics paper. Okay, so giving the theoretical base. My first argument is, what is happiness? What determines happiness? So as a concept, and you don't have to exactly start with what, why, you just, you can use any way that, you can start explaining the concept of happiness or emotion of happiness. Okay, so happiness is the state of inner well-being and harmony where a person experiences joy, contentment, meaning, and peace. Now, of course, it is very subjective. The feeling of happiness or the emotion of happiness, or the feeling happy actually is very subjective. Some people tend to get happy just by possessing materialistic things, maybe getting a new phone, buying something new, shopping for themselves, eating a good meal. And of course we all enjoy that. It's not that that there's something wrong with it. It's okay, because as humans we have some basic instincts that we tend to, when you satisfy those senses, you satisfy those instincts, of course you feel happy. So having a good meal will of course give you that feeling of satisfaction, contentment, and you feel generally good about life. Okay, especially people who love foodie, so like who love having different kinds of foods and all that. Okay, so that is something there. Then, but overall, you would feel that eventually the feeling of happiness comes through the fulfillment of duty, fulfillment of your dreams, your desires, and especially that is and you would say, and a goal which is really beyond the superficial senses, right? So happiness is subjective, but many people go through different stages of happiness, and that is what you have to sort of explain as a concept. So here I've just given you a basic definition, okay, and then I just wanted to divide it to give you an idea that the pleasure based happiness is also something which is there. And then you also have meaning based happiness. Meaning is again that you achieve something, a greater goal. That is something not which is very basic instinct driven, right? So deep enduring service, fulfillment of duty. So when you extract happiness by doing service, contributing back to society, by fulfilling your duty, that is that happiness is enduring. That is like you could say self-sustaining also, and it is meaning based happiness. The other kind of happiness, of course, pleasure based, where you're mostly instinct driven, short term sensory pleasure, luxury, food, rest, travel, right? Which is also equally essential. There's nothing harm in going for that. Both the kinds of happiness are equally important. So you could after explaining the concept, what does happiness as an emotion stand for, you could actually talk about that, what are the ways in which one can achieve happiness. Okay, so this is something that you can discuss further. What I've done, I've given you the philosophical perspective, like core pure philosophy, that what thinkers and philosophers have defined and talked about or discussed about happiness. So here you have like I have the Greek philosophy, or I would say like the Western philosophers, the Greek philosophers, what they have talked about. So Aristotle has talked about the concept of eudaimonia, right? So you all know this, you all have heard this term, you have prepared this concept from GS4. I would not waste the time explaining the concept. Okay, if you don't know, please search it, please read about it, please prepare at least 1 or 2 pager on the classical thinkers, Western classical thinkers like Aristotle, Plato, Socrates. So you should always have them, because their ideas, their theories can be used over multiple topics. So Aristotle has given the concept of eudaimonia, which is living in accordance with reason and virtue. Okay. Then Epicurus has talked about that happiness comes from aponia and ataraxia. Okay. So they have given you these kind of, Greek Latin words actually. Basically what it means, that Epicurus talks about that happiness is, you could say summation of two components. One is aponia, that which is absence of pain. So aponia, pain, ponia, right? You can relate it if you want to remember it for a long period of time. So ponia, aponia and pain, okay? So absence of pain, that means if you're not undergoing any pain, suffering, of course, that state, on top of it, if you are having the freedom from any kind of disturbance, that means if you're free, you're not getting disturbed. So all that combined together can give you the sense of happiness. So aponia and ataraxia, right? You can again see these philosophies, they are very elaborative. You can't just write it over here and just like be done with these philosophies. These are detailed concepts. If you're interested, you can search for these terms. you can understand the concept in detail. Overall, it's just that you have to mention few philosophers and their brief ideas, brief concepts on what they think about happiness, how it can be achieved, or what is the state of being happy feels like. So aponia plus ataraxia is what Epicurus has talked about, that happiness comes from this. Then happy also means that it is simple living, moderation. Most of the classical philosophers, thinkers have talked about that if you live simply, if you live in moderation, it's going to give you, or it's it's going to take you to the state of happiness. Okay, now what about Indian philosophy? So in Indian philosophy, of course, apart from your religious scriptures and everything, usually we call it, the happiness is called as Anand, right? So I don't want to call it Ananda, I just want to say Anand. So the feeling of Anand, Anand is feeling of bliss. It's not exactly happiness. And that's the, you could say, beauty or the irony also, that the English language, you cannot really exactly translate it to Hindi, or the Hindi words, they have very different profound meaning, and you cannot really find the exact word in the English. So as languages change, you really actually understand that the feelings and emotions associated with particular words also change. So happiness, yes, superficially you can call it Ananda, but actually Anand is, it's the spiritual kind of bliss and spiritual kind of happiness, right? So Anand is bliss. Actually, it's intrinsic, it's not acquired. That means whatever happiness you feel, as per the Indian philosophy, it has to be intrinsic, it needs to come from inside. It cannot be acquired through materialistic positions, or it cannot come from outside. And then we have, of course, Bhagavad Gita. It says that performing duty gives you happiness. If you are dutiful, if you are fulfilling your commitments, your duties, of course there's nothing beyond that, and that's going to take you to bliss or Ananda, or that's going to take you to happiness, right? And even Kant has said so, like the moral duty and all. Then Buddhism also talks about, in a way, that the absence of desires, feeling compassionate, being mindful, can take you to happiness. So absence of desires, but yes, fulfillment of desires leads to happiness, but that's superficial. So you have to be you have to make this point very clear in the essay when you're writing, that there has to be a distinction between superficial happiness and happiness which is intrinsic, which is coming from your inner inner nature. And of course it is also dependent on not just fulfillment of sensory pleasures, but of course it is fulfillment of duty, karma and all that. Okay, so Buddhism talks about this. Then you have I have used Albert Camus, in many ways. Maybe the students of Two at a Time are not very familiar, but the students of my, bachelor's course, test discussions and all, they already, are very familiar with this. So you can read about it. Okay, Albert Camus is a philosopher, was a philosopher, and then he has given one concept. He has written Myth of Sisyphus. So one must imagine Sisyphus happy. So actually, there's an entire story. I will not, elaborate it here. Please search about it. Albert Camus, Myth of Sisyphus. Okay. So Sisyphus actually is a, you could say, a Greek tragedy hero. Okay. And a personality in the Greek mythology. And through that, Albert Camus has given his, ideas upon it. So actually, basically, he has tried to say, because Sisyphus was doing one thing, repeatedly. He was doing one task repeatedly without getting any result. So Albert Camus has, because he was a Greek, hero. So Albert Camus, being a philosopher, he gave observations that, Sisyphus was not getting any result of, of his consistent task, consistent, you could say, commitment to the task that he was doing. But then still Sisyphus was happy in the process. So while doing that task, one must imagine Sisyphus happy. That's a phrase. Okay, if you just read the phrase in isolation, you will not understand its meaning. The entire context needs to be understood. So you have to actually take it as a Google search, like as a homework, as an assignment, that you can do Google search, that what is Myth of Sisyphus. Okay, know the story of Sisyphus as a, as a Greek tragedy hero. And then you have what is Albert Camus Myth of Sisyphus, view and points, and what he has said about it. And Albert Camus phrases this: one must imagine Sisyphus happy, because Sisyphus is doing his duty on daily basis. Okay, so basically it's accepting life's absurdity, that you're doing every day. You're waking up, brushing your teeth, going to work, or sitting down on your study table, and doing the efforts every day in, day out. And sometimes life feels absurd. What am I doing? You keep on asking this question. Why am I here? What am I doing? What all of us are doing on planet Earth, right? So that's the life's absurdity. We don't know the answer to it, but then we have to accept it, right? We accept it. We don't fight against it. Every day we wake up. Every day we, try to find our purpose. Sometimes we are able to find it. Sometimes we are not. And trust me on this, even if you have been able to find your purpose, it's never stagnant. It's never that one single purpose. It keeps on changing. The goalpost keeps on changing, right? So accepting life's absurdity, this is the philosophical background. You don't have to write everything. It's just that you can use up one or two ideas to just give your essay a philosophical or theoretical base, so that then you can further decode and dissect the topic with your arguments. So the note over here is that not all ideas would come as part of the first argument. Keep weightage and paragraphs less than the core idea, right? Because of course this is just to set the context. Now, one more, you could say sub argument for the first argument could be that what are the determinants of happiness? What determines happiness? What leads to happiness? So there are set of inner factors, there are set of outer factors. Inner factors, of course, your mindset, your attitude, your purpose of life, your why, why, right? I've already talked about in my recent session that you need to have a strong why. If you have a strong why, the how gets easier, right? So meaning and purpose, that why thing, why, needs to be very clear. And your emotional regulation, even if some challenges come, even if something unfavorable comes in front of you, unanticipated, or surprise, or a bitter experience for that matter, if that is happening, then how you regulate your emotions. You can always go back to the state of anand, state of bliss, right? And that's what the inner factors are. The outer factors, of course, because we can't deny the importance, the significance of outer factors in ensuring happiness. Why? Because if you're in poor health, you're not going to feel happy. If your quality of relationships, if your family relationships, if your friends and all that, you don't have sound relationships with people around you, of course you're not going to feel happy. You're going to feel isolated, you're going to feel lonely, right? Then the feeling of security, if you're feeling safe, secure, you have stability, like a major stability in life. You're not worried about, okay, from where my next meal is going to come, or how am I going to pay the rent, where am I living. So those kind of, if you have safety, security, of course it's going to ensure happiness, right? And of course the feeling of social belonging, you're not outcasted, you are part of some group, you're part of the society. That of course also brings happiness. So there are inner and outer factors, there are inner and outer determinants of happiness, and all of them together are important. But sometimes philosophers and thinkers get inclined, or are more inclined towards inner factors rather than the outer factors. But for a common man, for a common person, human being, both the factors are equally important. Okay, now let's move on to our core argument, because this is where we start discussing the exact, the core expectation of our essay topic. So then my second argument is journey is more important, happiness is part of journey. So because it said, there's no path to happiness, happiness is the path. So that means, and because why I'm talking about journey destination, you might question that, ma'am, this topic doesn't have the words journey and destination. Why you're so obsessed? Because if the word path is there, it means for me that some journey, some walking, something is happening, right? Because a path is supposed to be walked upon. So in a way, that journey destination has, it's not exactly coming as part of the essay topic, as words, but yes, there is an inherent meaning, right? There's an inherent, you could say, indication towards journey and destination. So journey is more important, happiness is part of journey. That means what we can do. And by happiness, you can use different, words, synonyms, for that matter, joy, bliss, whatever you feel like doing. Okay. So being is greater than having, becoming is greater than arriving, right? Being is greater than having. That means the materialistic possessions is not going to give you happiness, but the process of being, the process of existing in your own skin with your own desires, emotions, and aspirations is what is going to give happiness to you, right? And then becoming is more greater than arriving. So arriving at a place is not going to give you that kind of happiness, but what you have become in that process, in that journey of arriving at one certain stage in your life, that is what is going to give you happiness. Okay, so this is what is great. Then destination mindset is rejected. I will be happy when. So you can talk about that when we treat happiness as part of the journey, we tend to reject the idea that destination is going to give happiness, right? So I will be happy when I become this, I become that. Usually we tend to follow for a longer period of our life, for a human life, we tend to actually do this, that okay, when I clear my 10th board, I'll be happy. And even parents tell us na, bas 10 12th kar lo, fir to life mein ऐश ही ऐश है. And that you could say fake assurance has been given to every generation. ठीक है कि 10th कर लो तो फिर ऐश ही ऐश है, कोई चिंता नहीं है, 12th कर लो तो फिर ऐश ही ऐश है, फिर करियर बना लो तो ऐश ही ऐश है. नहीं, ऐश कभी नहीं आती है जिंदगी में. So I will be happy when I clear my 10th board, 12th board, when I crack IIT JEE, when I crack common entrance test or NEET, or when I become an IS officer. So when you keep on, postponing your happiness, that's really going to make you a miserable person. Okay. So reject that destination mindset. Happiness is state of being plus way to live in the present. The journey is what shapes us, the destination merely reveals it. So actually what happens is that the role of destination is there, of course, the path and all that, and the path to happiness, and happiness, path leading to the happiness as a goal, of course, that's important. But then we need to understand that, yes, what we become in the process, when you're trying to achieve happiness, in the process you come across so many things, you come across challenges and all, and that is where your character gets framed. Your experiences literally start molding you and shaping you. So that is what is very important. Okay. And happiness is not a goal, it's a byproduct. It's a very famous quote by Eleanor Roosevelt. You can use it in your essays. It's very short and sweet quote, so you can use it in a lot of ways, in different topics also. Happiness is not a goal, it's a byproduct. Okay. Now what's the third argument? Happiness needs to be in present and not as a thing to achieve. See, I'm not exactly dividing my essay happiness, part to happiness, happiness is the path. I'm not going to divide my essay in these three categories. It looks very weird, okay? And most of you are, habitual in, dividing the essay in, such a manner. Ideally, it should not be done, because then the essay looks fragmented and very, different from each, the other sections of the essay. So it's better that you brainstorm the arguments which tend to connect with each other, and then overall when you read the essay you feel that yes, I have addressed the demand of the topic. Okay. Yes, you would see, because earlier only I mentioned that if Gautam Vivekanandan has written the same essay topic, if you refer to that topic, that particular copy, of course you will see in the same way he has done this. He has written about happiness as an emotion, 2-3 pages about it. Then he has mentioned part to happiness, and then he has mentioned happiness is the path. So in a way he has done the same thing. It used to work earlier. I'm not saying that's completely wrong way to write an essay. It used to work earlier, but nowadays if everybody is doing the same thing, segregating or dividing your essay body content into 3 distinct parts, it's not really going to help. Okay. Because it's also not about how you're what you are writing, but how you're writing. The language skills, the way of expression, the way you're explaining your arguments, all that also play a lot of important role in the impression factor. So it's better not to divide the essay into fragments. It's better to have arguments which are connected to each other, so that the essay feels like a logical, coherent piece. So my third argument is happiness needs to be in present and not as a thing to achieve. So modern life trains mind to postpone happiness. I'll be happy when I clear the exam, get the promotion, lose weight, or achieve success. So do not dwell in the past, do not dream of the future, concentrate the mind on the present moment. So with these ideas, you just have to emphasize upon that happiness needs to be in the present, and it should not be as a thing to achieve. Okay. Then moving on, what you can do is that, again, because this is the core argument, so I've just elaborated it further. It's not that this is the only thing that you're going to write. My first idea was to talk about happiness as a concept. Then I moved on to my second major argument, which is where I'm trying to talk about that the life journey is important and happiness needs to be as part of the journey. Okay. Then I've talked about that happiness also means that we need to be in present, and it's not some far goal to be achieved. Okay. And this particular argument is what I am extending it over here, because this is my core argument. I'm going to write a lot many ideas about it. So focusing on the process of duty, the mind becomes peaceful, right? So how you're going to ensure happiness in the daily process, in the daily life, right? So happiness becomes the path. That means focusing on the process of duty, the mind becomes peaceful. You have the concept of nishkam karma. Shri Krishna has given life of chaos, never left playfulness. So actually, I have also given you the example that happiness is the path, and like feeling happy on daily basis, or being in the state of bliss on the daily basis. That's possible because that has been shown by Sri Krishna or Lord Krishna, in spite of having a life of chaos, like, if you know his entire, like, I always want to see God as humans, and I just, always want to see that if we have a life story attached to them, how they have, lived their life, what challenges they faced. And especially if you see, our two major, you could say, I don't want to call them mythology, yes, but yes, are like Sri Ram and Sri Krishna, both of them, when you see their life, there have been a lot of challenges, and it's like they have not been the pure, the perfect God. They in their human avatar, they in their human form actually were prone to making mistakes, had to undergo a lot of challenges. The life was never easy for them. Actually, to be really talk about this, you would understand that their life was more challenge, troublesome and challengeful, as compared to any other normal man living in their times, right? So, or as part of their story. So Shri Krishna's life is full of chaos, Mathura, Vrindavan to Dwarka, you all know these stories. Never left, but he still was always known to be playful. He was always known that, whenever he used to enter any place, people would become happy, to meet him. They were excited. Even, the like the Kauravas and the Pandavas, both, they equally revered him, they equally liked him, right? So in a way, that's what how we need to become, that we should not just become, or we should not have a victim mindset. So playfulness or happiness should be the part of our nature, rather than making it as a destination kind of thing. Psychology also shows humans suffer from arrival fallacy. So this is the same concept which I'm talking about, that we also suffer from the idea that if we arrive at one place, we will be happy. So that is what is, as the name, as the term suggests, arrival fallacy is the same concept, that humans tend to understand that if we arrive at one place, that means if you achieve a goal, of course, not arrival, but if you achieve a goal, you arrive at your goal, you will feel happy, but then there's a momentary pleasure. Of course, you feel happy, but that's not sustainable. That's just for few seconds, few minutes, few days. And then you start, finding new ways for new happiness, new sources of happiness, right? So psychologists have also talked about that the human beings, humanity overall tends to suffer from this arrival fallacy, where achievement gives only temporary joy. Mind quickly seeks the next goal. Once you have become an IS officer, do you think people stop? No. Then there's new goal coming up. Now if they have to get married, or maybe somebody has to resign and open a coaching, or XYZ, different things, or maybe somebody who has, like, thought that, okay, now through Bharat Darshan, I am going to become a traveler, right? So that's how, we tend to change our goals. Once you become, or once you achieve something, are you going to dwell on its, achievement, happiness, years and years? No. You're going to, like, that's human nature. You tend to now quickly jump on to the next goal. Okay, what to do next? And even people probe you. Okay, what next? What next? That's how the humanity and the human thinking works actually. So mind quickly seeks the next goal. Concept of flow. Deep happiness arises during complete involvement, not after completion. So actually, many people, many scientists, many researchers, many great people have actually talked about this, that they did not feel happy when the task was completed, but they really felt joyful, happy when they were actually in the process of completing the task. When they were in the process of doing that discovery, that innovation, that invention. Marie Curie was happy sitting every day in her lab, and it's said, I'm not sure how correct, how factually correct it is or not, but it's said that she was aware that she's going to die from that radiation. Of course, she must have been aware that those elements, of course, are are radioactive elements, and they are emitting radiations going to impact her body. So but still she was there every day, in her lab, doing experiments, and doing this because she loved being a part of it. She loved being part. She was happy when she was in her lab, right? If you take out Marie Curie from her lab, her identity would have been vanished, right? She would have felt, identity loss. So the process actually gives you happiness. It gives you the sense of identity and the belongingness, right? That yes, you are doing something. So the concept of flow is actually about the same thing. That deep happiness actually happens when you're completely involved in the process of achieving that task, doing that task, rather than actually, having achieved that task or completing that task. Artist is happiest while painting. Dancer is actually happy while dancing. So everybody's happy in the actual process. Viktor Frankl has given you a quote which is relevant to this, of course, discussion going on. Happiness cannot be pursued, it must ensue. Happiness cannot be pursued. You can't keep on running after happiness. It must ensue. It must happen on its own. One must have a reason to be happy. Once the reason is found, one becomes happy automatically. So if you're finding a reason, and that reason, of course, has to be sustainable, it needs to be self-sustaining, it needs to be intrinsic, right? So this is what, I don't know why, but the discussion is, feeling very philosophical. It's just like I'm taking a session on how to be happy. So I hope you guys are not getting distracted. You are on the topic. And this is my third argument. All these ideas I'll be discussing in my third argument. Now, moving on to the fourth argument, many paths to feel happy. Now, this is not my counter argument, because the topic clearly has said, very firmly has said, there is no path to happiness. Happiness is the path. So actually, I cannot go against the topic that happiness, happens when you achieve something, or, there definitely is a path to happiness. But in a way, I can go for a parallel, narrative, a parallel argument, which talks about that there are many paths to feel happy. So in the process also, even if I don't take happiness as a destination or as an endpoint, in the process also, I might find different ways to feel happy. Okay, so that's my parallel argument. That's my fourth argument. And that is, while doing your profession, your work, you tend to feel happy. So creative expression, some people, when they are, fulfilling their creative talents, when they're painting, dancing, then they feel happy. Some people feel happy when they're servicing, giving service to humanity, being in service to nature, taking care of animals, right? And then some people feel happy when they're on the path of spirituality. They feel that, all these external things are just, superficial pleasures for human senses. They don't believe in that, and they just want to, keep on going for something higher. That spiritual feeling, is the, you could say, the real push for them, the real, motivational factor. So you have different people, but nobody is different. I would not say a person on the spiritual growth path is actually, better person than a person who's doing the career, or, feeling happy through creative expression. No, everybody's path is different. We can't really compare who is better or who is good in this or is perfect. No, everybody is having a different notion of happiness, and that is working for them. So people who are creative, who are doing paintings, you have Leonardo da Vinci, you have Van Gogh, right? And especially Van Gogh, without recognition, was doing all of this. I think during his lifetime, only one painting of him got famous, and actually he became a famous, famous painter post his death. So his works, all got famous when he was not there in the world to see him, his paintings get that appreciation. So Van Gogh, without recognition, he kept on doing the work of painting and all. You have Frida Kahlo, Frida Kahlo, of course, in her lifetime only got the recognition, but she had a lot of, disabilities, a lot of health issues, which was, like it is said that somebody else who had the same kind of health issues would not even survive. But she survived, she, endured it, and she actually expressed all through her paintings. So in a way, creative expression, they were feeling happy in the process. Even architecture, sculpture, people who are, making buildings, who are, into architecture, who are into sculpture. You have famous names like Michelangelo and Bernini, right? Like they are into Michelangelo, is very famous. His some sculptures are so famous. Like, I think David and all that, right? David Goliath wala one, and like a lot many, right? So you've got Michelangelo, and his expression, his happiness was through, framing those sculptures and all. Then writers, poets, authors, even scientists, Marie Curie, I already gave the example, right? Mozart, being blind but still working on music. So all that is, their way to feel happy. Some people feel happy while serving the community, the society. Service to man is service to God. Baba Amte, you have, Salu Marada Thimakta, who planted a lot of trees. Then you have, Masanobu Fukoko, who is a Japanese, he's a farmer philosopher. He's actually a farmer, but, through his farming, he has, tend to give a lot of philosophies and a lot of concepts. So these are the people who are, serving the community, serving the society, humanity, and they are feeling happy in that process. Okay. Yes, Mahatma Gandhi can also come. It's just that it was a conventional example. That's why I've not included. My idea is to give you unconventional examples too. So spiritual growth mein, nirvana, bliss, enlightenment, Gautam Buddha, of course, we all know these examples. Okay. So now moving on, that means this was all about what? That there are many paths to feel happy. Okay. It is sort of, the fourth argument was sort of counter, sort of parallel, not exactly counter. I'm not saying that happiness as a destination. It's just that I'm trying to say that there are many ways to include happiness in your daily life. Okay. So see, it all comes down to that how you're representing your ideas on the paper, how you're writing. That is why language skills actually matter a lot. Why I'm emphasizing on this? Because in the recent few days, I was, evaluating few essay copies, and therein I realized that the student, sometimes have nice ideas, good, arguments, but the way, if they're not able to express it properly onto the paper, then, the evaluator, the person who's reading your essay is not able to actually understand your idea and your argument. So language skills, yes, they play an important part. And in this way, in a way, I'm hinting towards, all of you, that if you feel your language skills are compromised, you're not good with expressions, you're not good with framing sentences, English language is not your forte, please work on it. Please keep on practicing, because language is all about practice. Okay. The more you practice, the more you read things, learn things, the more you'll be able to actually write and use it, apply it actually, the learnings. So, but yes, you need to, because ideas dimag mein to sabke achhe hain, but how you're presenting it on paper, because the copy will go to the evaluator, not you with your ideas will go, right? So your copy becomes the judge, like, the person judges your copy, and, then he or she is giving you the score and the marks. So please be careful with, your language skills and how you're expressing the ideas. Then we come to the introduction and the conclusion part. Okay. Now, before I discuss the introduction conclusion, just to have a different perspective, please do check out Gautam Vivekananda's, copy. You would find it over my channel also. And, the same, the part to happiness wala topic he has written, and just see what ideas he has written. I'm not saying the way he has written is completely wrong. No, the way he has written is actually equally good. But yes, the only thing is that what he has done is that, his essay can be easily categorized, that the one, few pages dedicated to the concept of happiness, then there's part to happiness, and there's no part to happiness, like, something like that, or happiness is the path. That's why, that's how he has divided. But it's a good copy to actually read and understand, and especially to get something, as a different perspective on the same topic. So for the purpose of having a different perspective, I'm recommending you to actually read that copy. Okay, so do that, and you will have a different perspective. Then we have, for the introduction. Okay, let's move on to the conclusion, then we can go back to the introduction. So conclusion, in the same, sense of things, I just want to talk about that, because conclusion is wrapping up the topic, so we need to write ideas which, makes sense towards the conclusion. So neuroscience suggests happiness is strengthened too. So, usually you tend to give some suggestions, you tend to give some advice, you want to bring in some philosophy, you just want to reiterate, that, okay, happiness is something that cannot be viewed as a destination. So on the daily basis, how you can achieve happiness. So maybe you're writing some suggestions. Okay, it could be simple suggestions. It could be even the same thing that, if you're you could say, in your creative pursuits, you feel happy, do practice, that creativity. So neuroscience suggests happiness is strengthened through small daily wins. Rather than focusing on that one major big win, it's better to focus on, or actually, align small wins on daily basis. Okay, today's, task was to write 5 answers. I've done that. I'm feeling happy. So small daily wins is actually going to include happiness on the daily, life. Then, of course, gratitude. It's very important. You cannot feel happy unless until you're already feeling happy for the things you have. Yes, it's difficult. We tend to be, complainers, cribbers. It's very natural for all of us to feel that way. But in a way, gratitude is really, really going to help you. You have come a long way. Even if you're preparing for the exam for the past, few years, Still, you've got the chance, the opportunity to actually sit and prepare for this exam. Your parents are supportive. We have many reasons to feel grateful. So actually practicing gratitude can really bring happiness, and it's been said by psychologists, philosophers, everybody. Okay. So routine mindfulness. Now, don't always live in the past or in the future. Some people tend to also live in the future. It's not just always the past for them. You have to live in the present. You have to feel happy. You have to be mindful of what is happening in the present moment. So routine mindfulness, like force your mind to think or be in the present moment. Okay. And of course, duty over pleasure. Overall, you would find that yes, happiness comes through momentary pleasures, when you satisfy your senses. But then most of the times you would find self-sustaining or sustainable happiness when you fulfill your duty. So duty over pleasure, avoid over consumerism to get momentary pleasures. It is sort of a caution. I told you now that in conclusion, sometimes you also caution. You write an idea which is acting as a caution that, okay, should we as community, as collective thing, should not do this so that, we are able to achieve something like this. So it's, just like a caution statement. Then Zen philosophies say what? This could be your, ending quote. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. So in a way, that it's the Zen philosophy says that even if you achieve bliss, the state of Anand, the state of enlightenment, nirvana, everything, but still it's all about chop wood, carry water, chop wood, carry water. That means you have to live your life. That daily, mundane activities you have to carry it on. It's not that after achieving the enlightenment, somebody else will come and brush your teeth for you. No, you have to take care of yourself. So the daily mundane task needs to be done, and that's how the life is. So it's better to feel happy even while you're brushing your teeth and consuming your food, rather than fixating on some far off object or far off destination to feel happy. Okay, so that's how you can conclude. Of course, the topic is purely philosophical, so you won't have very definite, very objective ideas. You have to be subjective. You have to just express your ideas through philosophy. You can bring in role models, you can bring in cautionary statements, you can bring in some quote or poems which talks about happiness, which talks about focusing on the journey and rather than on the destination, focusing on the process rather than the outcome, right? Because these are the overlapping themes for this. Now let's come to the introduction. So for this topic, introduction, because of course you can write about happiness and all, but it's sometimes challenging to write good introductions for such kind of topics. But in a way, the way you write it can also be equally impressive. It can equally fetch higher scores for you. So a general explanation, you can also start with that. Okay, you can explain the concept of happiness, or maybe you can start with the general explanation of the humans, emotions. So few emotions in humans' life is not easily defined. The feeling of success, contentment, peace, fulfillment, and even happiness. Because I told you, initially that the feelings of happiness is subjective. And why this explanation? Because keeping in mind that I had brainstormed for this topic, because my first argument was defining and explaining the concept of happiness through short term, long term, and like those intrinsic factors and different factors, the different determinants for happiness, and how you're supposed to feel happy. So all that, this will become very natural. It will become coherent and in sync with each other if I use this introduction and then I actually use my first argument for the body content. So it will gel up together actually. So the human civilization in its pursuit of happiness has birthed a lot of ways to feel happy. So creative pursuits, service or spiritual growth apart from sensory pleasures. So here general explanation type introduction means that you're just simply explaining the concept. You're just simply, writing different ideas about that inherent meaning of the topic. Okay. Because we usually opt for anecdotal, story based personality. So this general explanation based introduction sometimes it doesn't feel very impressive, but it still works, and especially for certain kind of vague topics it's really going to work. Okay, so you can always approach your introduction in this way also. Then the second way could be that maybe I can take up the story of life of Pi, and how Pai Patel and that tiger and how they were trying to survive. Maybe they were not exactly happy, there were not smiles on their face, but they were surviving and they were enjoying each other's company through the various challenges that they were facing. So in a way he survives because he creates meaning and happiness in daily routines. So I'm not sure if you guys have seen this movie or read this book or not, but it's very famous. You must have seen the movie. If not, whenever next time you are watching any movie, do watch it, Life of Pi. Okay. And so Pi Patel actually, because there's a tiger, and he's like, you could say stuck with a tiger on a boat. Okay. So how they are trying to survive with each other, how they're trying to find meaningfulness in that survival on a boat. That's what is actually happiness about. So you could include this, and even for that matter, the alchemist, protagonist Santiago, you can even narrate his story also to actually write the introduction. Okay, so this completes the discussion for essay topic 1. Then we have the topic 2, that means it's section B, topic number 7. Okay, and I'll just take a water break, mini water break. Right, so the section B topic is all ideas having large consequences are always simple. And for this one, I was saying that you don't have to, write it in a pestle format or write it in a way that you just keep on justifying that, okay, politically, all ideas having large consequences are simple. All, or, economically, all ideas having large consequences are simple. From societal perspective, all ideas having large consequences are simple. Like, using different examples. I hope you get the point. Many students tend to do like that. No, you're not supposed to write your essays, at least in the current times, with that process. Okay, so you have to dissect, you have to decode the topic, you have to philosophically decode and write arguments, and then use examples from your understanding of current or contemporary, or even your GS understanding needs to be brought in as examples, not as the arguments. Okay, so please distinguish that, and let's focus on this topic now. So what are the keywords in the phrases? Of course, ideas, large consequence, simple. Then after reading the topic, what theme category can I find it in? I am finding that this topic are all ideas having large consequences are always simple. Of course, I can club it under simplicity as a theme, as a category. Why? Because a few years back, we also had this topic. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. So in a way, simple थोड़ा match हो जा रहा है, तो maybe one of the themes and categories could be simplicity for that matter. And then the other one is of course wisdom. What's it trying to say? All ideas having large consequences are always simple. So wisdom tells us not to complicate things. Okay, knowledge is complicated because it has to be on a lot of things, on a lot of subjects. But wisdom tells you to simplify things. Wisdom is simple. It's it's never complex. It's tend to simplify the ideas in your mind. Okay, so you can of course put it under the theme category of wisdom also. Now after reading the topic, what ideas are coming into my mind? Human civilizational growth has been from, like, you could say actually it's simple complex to simple. So in a way we follow a cycle. It's never a linear dimension. We always follow a cycle that human civilizations tends to, like, first go for simple things, then we tend to complicate it, we go for complex structures, and then we again think of simplifying things. We were living a simple life when we were hunters and gatherers. With agricultural settlements, we complicated. With urbanization, we complicated our life. And then again, now in the contemporary 21st century, everybody is thinking of going for minimalism, going for simplicity, right? Going for less things, less is more, right? So in that way, that's how the human civilization actually proceeds. So all ideas having large consequences are simple. So in a way, we have to emphasize that whatever ideas humanity has been thinking earlier, it is complicated, but then they tend to be simple, and those simple ideas will have large consequences. They will have a consequence over a wider, it could be human population also, or on a wider sector, like every sector gets impacted by it, right? Then revolutionary ideas impact big. Essence is simple. That means all ideas, all revolutionary ideas, they tend to be simple, but they have large impacts. Okay, do or die, like these kind of simple slogans still stay with us, right? It's very simple, do or die, because there's nothing else. It's either do or die. So you got these kind of, you can take up as examples that revolutionary ideas, revolutions have happened on simple things: liberty, fraternity, equality. those kind of, concepts. Okay. Then the life journey is always about, from complex to simple. So you start with a lot of complicated things, complicated emotions, complicated life, and then you always want to have a simple life, right? So the journey is always about from complex to simple. Then knowledge expands and wisdom contracts. Because after reading the topic, if I'm thinking all ideas having large consequences are simple, if I am connecting it to the theme of wisdom, of course, it means for me that knowledge is ever expanding because there's no end to expansion. But then wisdom is always about, removing the unusable things or removing the extras, and contracting yourself with few simple principles. Okay, so wisdom contracts, and through this, you could like think of a lot of ideas. Then moving on, how am I supposed to write the arguments? How am I supposed to start my essay? So because the topic is having the keyword of ideas, of course, I will start with the concept of, okay, what is meant by ideas? Because all ideas having large consequences are simple. So yes, my first argument needs to be about ideas. What does it mean by idea? Okay, and how humanity thrives on ideas, because those ideas brings innovation, inventions, and a lot of different changes. So ideas have potential to bring changes. Ideas can transform societies, they can alter history, they can reshape human behavior. Power lies in why these ideas are powerful, because it lies in the universality of the ideas. Some ideas are applicable everywhere. Do you think no people of Asia don't want liberty, equality, fraternity, or it was just the people of France who needed that? No. So in a way, universality of the principles, the ideas would actually be, those ideas, that means are always going to be present in our world, in our society. So universality, and that means they are powerful ideas. Clarity, simple, do or die. Cogito, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. Intuitive appeal. So, it appeals to your mind that yes, this is what we are supposed to do. So, that's how you tend to, that's the importance of ideas. Ideas are also normative principles. They are, sometimes moral claims. Some ideas are based out of morality. You should not cheat. You should not, like you should be honest and all that, right? Then you have ideas are normative principles in the sense of political visions. All those revolutions, and they were happening because people wanted a socio-political economic system which actually gives them freedom, rights, human rights, right? Then scientific insights, some ideas, right? But usually you will find scientific ideas to be complicated, but then over the time they are simplified. Then the social beliefs, right? So all these ideas are actually, you could club it over. See, why I've done this, because I'm just building up on the topic. So here, through these, I could talk about what are the political ideas, what are those social beliefs, and all, right. And if I give different examples, I'll be able to elaborate it into 2 to 3 paragraphs, so that I can at least set the context and start my discussion. Now I move on to the major argument, the core argument of the essay. So ideas have led to human progress and growth. Nobody can deny that. So that is why I was focusing on the discussion of ideas, because ideas only have led to the progress of humans. If nobody thought of settling down, having agricultural settlements, putting out the growing crops and all, then of course we would not be here. So ideas are actually which have led to the human progress and growth. What's my second argument? The second argument is human civilizational growth has been what? It follows a cycle, because I have to always, stay nearby to my topic. My topic is what? All ideas having large consequences are simple. So I have to talk about that why all ideas having large consequences are not complex, or why we are saying that those ideas which have large consequences but they are not complex, they are simple. So that kind of discussion is how I'm trying to do. So human civilizational growth, or the process, because these ideas are only going to be, frame the base for the growth. It follows a cycle of complex, simple, complex, right? So human civilization does not move in a straight line from primitive to advanced. It follows a cyclical yet evolutionary pattern. You can, what is the justification for this argument? I'll give you a few examples. Now, there have been various diggings and archaeological excavations going on, right? And has been happening, in different parts of the world and even in India. And now we have come to an understanding that Indus Valley civilization was not the first civilization, or we can't say that, nothing existed before it, or that was the first civilization we had. We are getting, different, you could say, proofs through excavations that we had civilizations even existing before that. Maybe some disasters, something happened, some extinction happened because of XYZ factor. Then again, people, started urbanizing, or started, living in groups, and developing as part of the civilization. Then again something happens, maybe even it could be minor factors, a river changing its course, a earthquake, any climate abnormality, irregularity can destroy or destruct these civilizations. And then again, when the 21st century civilizations, that we have. So in a way, we have been following a cycle. It was never linear way. Okay, the humanity has been following a cycle. Of course, complexity can vary. We are not saying that maybe the people of IVC or the civilization before that were having a laptop or having the concept of internet, but maybe they were advanced in some different ways, right, for their timeline, for their time. So actually it's it doesn't happen in a straight line. It is a cyclical process. Okay, it's evolutionary pattern, but it is cyclical. So it's initial complexity, then you go for the conscious simplification. You realize, oh, it's becoming too complex, let's simplify it. And then again the cycle repeats, that you go for higher order complexity, right? So complexity could be from any perspective. It could be from the systems, the society, the way the people live, thought processes actually, right? So all that can be brought in. Okay, and then to attain knowledge, add things; to attain wisdom, remove things. So Lao Tzu has said this, that actually if you want to really achieve knowledge, you need to keep on having knowledge on daily basis. So you need to add things, you need to add to the knowledge every day. But if you really want to achieve wisdom, you have to remove things, you have to simplify. So all ideas having large consequences are simple, because wisdom will simplify things. And of course, wisdom can only impact or have large consequences, or impact over a larger, you could say, people, or larger numbers. Okay, so that's what you are supposed to write here. Then you've got from the same hint, materialism to minimalism. That's how we are proceeding. So here I just wanted to talk about that, how we are moving in a cyclical manner, and all ideas having large consequences are simple. That would come in the later part. But again, I'm just trying to emphasize that why we need that simplicity in thought. Why do we are talking about that ideas need to be simple, and how it has been for the humanity, for the human being. It has never been that, okay, everybody was thinking that, okay, let's make our life simple. No, the things started getting complicated, and then we realized, okay, let's make it simple. Again, we started complicating it, right? That's how the things are happening in the civilizational progress, in the evolution of stuff. Then you've got within the second argument only, you've got the human intelligence complicates things. So because we want to come to the discussion of that, the ideas which have larger impact are going to be simple, we need to first literally decode that why complex ideas, and why they are not working, and why we are, because everything feels complex. How we are saying all ideas having large consequences are simple, it feels counterintuitive, because we are complicating our lives. We feel that by having complexity in our lives, that's how we are going to achieve something. So human intelligence tends to complicate things, because we tend to focus on innovations, researches, methods, strategies, hierarchy. एक कोई स्कूल ऑफ थॉट आया नहीं कि उसके अगेंस्ट 4 स्कूल ऑफ थॉट और आ जाते हैं, या एक कोई फिलोसफर ने एक कोई कॉन्सेप्ट दिया, उसको नेगेट करने के लिए, उसको अपोज करने के लिए 4 नए ओपिनियंस आ जाते हैं. So that's how we tend to complicate, and that's not something which is bad, because in a way that's how the thought process gets better. Or you could say that the civilization actually grows intellectually. The intellectual advancement can happen only through these kind of debates. But yes, you can always talk about that, how human intelligence tends to actually complicate things, and you can take up examples from your GS 1 to 4 understanding. Human intelligence multiplies problems and does not merely solve them, right? So here I'm just trying to say that we tend, as a natural habit of humans, we tend to complicate things. Rules, regulations, clauses, like first we make some regulations, then we transfer them into rules, then the rules also have some clauses, and then these clauses lead to loopholes, and then you tend to complicate. It's never black or white. The entire thing, the entire system is becoming gray. Why? Because you have deliberately left loopholes to make these systems, to make the laws, to make, the entire life of humans living under a nation state complex. Filing a tax is complex, this and that clause, yeah, so everything becomes so complex because of the clauses. So, and that clauses helps you violate the rules. Actually, the best systems are not those that add controls, but those that remove friction. So in a way, this quote is very relevant to that, how we should be actually focusing on making things simple, that those are the best systems which actually remove friction, okay, which do not just keep on adding controls. Cognitive depth often turns simple needs into complex struggles. So the capacity of humans to explore cognitive depth actually leads to complex things. Rousseau has argued that primitive humans were simpler and content. So Rousseau always talks about that, all the primitive civilizations were very simple. They were very content with how they were living. There was no complexity in the system, the structure. Every person was equal, or maybe every person was doing the job assigned to them, the job they wanted to do, and it was very simple. But now we have, complicated. Civilization and reason introduce comparison, pride, inequality. Humans overthink simple realities. Animal kill to eat, humans justify killing through ideology. So in a way, a very sharp thought process, or very short, you could say sharp thought and idea. Animals kill to eat humans. Animals are very simple. They are killing to eat, to satisfy their appetite. Humans kill not for their, satisfaction of hunger, or to satisfy their appetite, or to, fulfill their instinct of hunger. They are killing for ideology. They're complicating things. They feel that their ideology is so superior, it's so good, that the other human is not doesn't deserve to live. So, how this is how we complicate things. Humans overthink. Everything is simple. If every living being has got breath going on, they have got a right to live. You cannot superimpose or impose your ideology. My life is greater than yours just because I'm following some ideology. That's a very stupid way to think, right? So that's how the humans tend to complicate things, and that's why we need that all those ideas which are simple, that only are going to actually create big consequences, major changes in society. So that's how you're, writing these arguments. Then you move on to the third argument. Thinkers found simple ideas had large consequences. So actually now this is your core argument of the topic, where you talk about that people, philosophers, thinkers actually understood that, that if your ideas were simple, it had consequences, not just spatially but temporally. We still say do or die even after so many years. How many slogans do you remember from even, any post or any reel that you have seen even 2 days back? So simple ideas tend to stay with people, right? And that's what the thinkers and philosophers or the experts really understood. Cognitive dimension, why this is happening? Because cognitive dimension, human cognition favors simplicity. We tend to think that we like complex things, but actually human cognition wants to be simple. It favors simplicity. Reduce the cognitive load. The brain doesn't want to, become a computer or a storage system. So you have to reduce the cognitive load. Just think about all men are equal. Don't complicate that. If you're following this ideology, then of course, you are superior. Then simple ideas carry moral absolutes. I always tell to my students that, and even this was my thought process for a very long period of time, that everything is gray. There's no black and white. But I can tell you now that, when you start thinking everything in gray, then you start actually believing in the loopholes, in the clauses, in the, complexity of things. You need to simplify. Moral absolutes. Don't get caught up into the grays. Either it's black or white, it's right or wrong. When you tend to or live in the grays, then you tend to actually complicate your life. It's either this or that, yes and no. There's not maybe, there's no maybe. Trust me, if you start following this small principle in your life, it's really going to help you. It's either a yes or a no. And if it's not a yes, then it's definitely a no. Right? It's never maybe. People use language, people use words like maybe to create false promises that something can be done in the future. Maybe. No, if it's not a firm yes, it's a no. Okay, so follow this principle and it's going to really simplify even your life. Right versus wrong, justice versus injustice, black versus white, right? So moral absolutes here, simply follow that. Simple ideas spread faster. Do or die, liberty, equality, fraternity. I already discussed this. Simplicity unifies, complexity divides, right? When you are just adhering to simple things, all men are equal, you feel united. When you start dividing people based on ideology, castes, gender, this and that, then of course, you're just dividing, and then nothing is going to happen. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction, because for the simplicity purpose, you need to understand that if you're doing something, there will be an opposite reaction to it, or there will be a reaction to it. So that's how the dynamic sits. You don't have to sort of complicate it. Then how easy or simple is to create or implement simple ideas? Because we need to focus on the keyword large consequences. We can't ignore the keyword of large consequences. That is why here, using different words, I'm trying to just decode that particular thing, that how easy or simple is to create or implement simple ideas. Wisdom ensures toning down, distilling what truly matters. Okay, and this just requires immersive study research. That means summary. So if you want to summarize something, you want to have major takeaway, then of course it requires you to study it in detail. You need to actually go for research, so requires mental maturity. So actually prudence plus wisdom ensures toning down what is required. What is required to make things simple? How easy or simple is to create or implement simple ideas? So actually what is required to implement simplicity or implement simple ideas is wisdom, maturity, prudence, right? Because giving out a summary for anything requires immersive study and research. It needs mental maturity. Not easy, because complexity flatters ego. Complexity hides inefficiency. Complexity hides loopholes, gaps. Simplicity invites criticism, ridicule. Oh, you're so simple. We even tend to criticize simple people who tend to dress simply. She is so simple. He is so simple. So simple is not, being appreciative in the contemporary society. But complexity flatters ego. It, hides loopholes. जितना complex laws and regulations करोगे, उतने loopholes, उतने gaps से, उतना उस चीज का फायदा उठाया जाएगा. Simple laws for everybody, one set of rule, right? The moment you start doing it, it will be really, going to impact humanity in a sustainable way. It needs engagement with complexity. Gautam Buddha's journey through various spiritual methods. So actually, it's not easy that the first step becomes simple. To actually be able to come to a simple idea, an idea which is simple, you have to move through a lot of complexity. Why? Because when Gautam Buddha got enlightenment, he had to go through a lot of different strategies to get that enlightenment, because he was not sure which path to pursue to achieve that spirituality. So he was trying a lot of things. He was starving himself, he was meditating, he tried many different strategies and methods. So actually the complexity was there, but then you move to simple only when you do the complex things. Maybe this discussion itself is becoming complex, but I'm just trying to say that these are the ideas that you're supposed to write in the essay, that actually you cannot jump directly to simplicity. You move in a phased manner, you try complex things, and then you extract the simpler things out of it. Okay, so the path to simplicity is actually through complex stuff, right? And that's how you can bring in this idea, and why complexity is not so easy to, simplicity is not so easy to implement, because complexity is where people are hiding. They are trying to satisfy their ego, they're trying to hide the inefficiency, they're trying to hide the loopholes, the corruption and all, right? Then not comfortable with counter perspective, but if you have a valid one, do include. So actually I've just the things that I've written in blue are usually the quotes or these set of instructions. So actually here because usually the last argument in the body content becomes the counter argument, but not every topic gives you the possibility. So actually you need to understand that here in this topic, if you find a counter argument, it's okay. You have to think from that perspective. I was really not comfortable to bring something which is totally negating the topic or which is totally countering the topic. Okay, that's why I've written over here. Then the simplest solutions are often the hardest to accept. That's, because as we tend to have cognitive depth and you want to complicate things, so it becomes very difficult for us to accept simple things. Okay, that's how you can end your this particular essay. This topic is something which is not easy to write because it is easy to understand, but to be able to decode it philosophically in the actual real examination time would become a little challenging unless until you have already practiced a similar essay topic. Okay, so sometimes that is why the topic feels easy. It feels that you have understood the meaning, but to be able to actually write it in a way which can fetch you higher score becomes challenging, becomes difficult. Then for conclusion, what we can do, we can of course bring in the contemporary relevance, bring in the contemporary perspective, why we are focusing on simplicity, simple living, high thinking, simple ideas, long lasting impacts, human thought moves in cyclical manner. And then you are actually going to that think that okay, the acceptance of idea will come from the environment. So uncomplicate life, emotions and actions. Complexity is the enemy of execution. Tony Robbins has said that. And of course, Leonardo da Vinci has given this quote, simplicity is ultimate sophistication. This has also been your UPSC previous year question. So you can actually use this to end the essay. For the introduction, what you can do is you can bring in the historical anecdote, the Dandi, the Salt March by Gandhi. It was, this idea was ridiculed by British colonialists and British officers, that they thought that how assault disobedience or how a protest or this kind of thing is going to work. But and they were like they literally ignored. But then later on they realized that okay, it's actually becoming a mass movement, and then they took it seriously. I'm sure you all have read this thing in the modern history. So just revise from there if you're not aware of it. So Dandi Salt March by Gandhiji was actually a very simple idea, but he was ridiculed. He was even ignored. But then when the officials started noticing that yes, he's gathering a lot of followers, people are following him, people are actually doing the salt disobedience, not paying the tax and all that in various different pockets of India, then of course they started taking it seriously. Then from the perspective of governance, you can always actually this topic, when I still remember that when I read it for the first time, like when the essay paper of mains was out, when I actually read this topic for the first time, I just related it to governance. That all ideas having large consequences are simple. So actually, because it happens with me, I'm not sure it happens with you or not, but it happens with everybody, I think. So whenever you read a topic, maybe one idea comes as a first point, as a first idea. For me, it was governance. That in governance, we need to always go for simple ideas, because simple ideas will have large consequences. It will be able to benefit a larger population. It will be sustainable actually in the longer term, right? So case study of direct benefit transfer. Now, why am I saying this? Of course, you can use this, but how it is relevant? Because in a way, wasn't it simple to actually do it? It became possible because now, because we ensured there has to be some prerequisites. Everybody needs to have a bank account. There needs to be financially included into the formal economy. So all that, of course, was prerequisite. But DBT solved a lot of issues for the government. Sometimes government was really feeling the challenge of controlling corruption, controlling the leakage, and they were not able to, because the money, the funds was trickling down from one authority to another, and within that the process of getting transferred from one authority to another, it was getting leaked out as corruption. So the central government, the government at the top was actually worried about that how to control this leakage, and then they devised the plan of direct benefit transfer. Directly give to the end user, don't go through the middlemen and go to the middle stages, right? So but of course it was possible only when IT revolution, when we were able to financial inclusion happened actually. People were inducted into the formal economy, they had bank accounts, then only of course it became possible. But yes, this is a very classic case of telling that all ideas having large consequences are simple. And from the governance perspective, actually you can, write the case study of DBT and how it, it helped avoid leakages and corruption, and you are transferring directly in beneficiaries account, and it is, it is just simple ideas plus its implementation with integrity that you actually can bring systemic change. So this is what you can write it as towards the end, end point of your introduction, that the will to bring changes can happen with simple ideas, implement those simple ideas with integrity, with honesty. If you still complicate stuff, if you still, are living in the loopholes, living in the clauses and taking benefit of the clauses and the loopholes, then of course you're not going to, impact or have good governance. So when you do all of this with integrity, then you can bring systemic changes, then you can bring long lasting impact over the people. So that's how you're supposed to, write the essay, the introduction. This is again from history, very simple. You can use it, in different topics also. And from, because I told you that when I read this topic, like years back also, when this topic was out, like not years back, in 24, it came. So yes, when I saw the topic, my first idea was about the governance, that we can have simple ideas in governance, and it's really going to, help a lot of people. So simple ideas, large consequences. Okay, so that's how you can conclude your essay. And I hope you learned something. These two topics were a little bit challenging. They were not difficult to interpret and understand, but difficult to write from philosophical perspective, and to bring in multiple and diverse arguments and examples. So I hope you learned something today, and then I'll see you in the part 4. That will be the last for the CSE 24 essay topics. Okay, and keep on practicing. For further, extra perspective, extra understanding, you can refer to Gautam Vivekananda's copy for the, the first topic, the part 2 happiness wala. And on that note, take care, keep studying. All the very best.